Captain's Log Supplemental. Avengers 3 news. Yeah, remember Avengers 2? Remember when that was a thing? Well, now we're gonna move on to and talk about Avengers 3. Wasn't that a great movie? Oh, well, wait, you haven't seen that movie yet? Yeah, that's because we live in a day and age now where we get all kinds of news about sequels to movies that haven't even been put out yet. And that's, of course, because studios like Marvel really have to plan ahead. Now, the question I have sometimes is, why tell us about certain things this early? Why get the internet all in a tizzy and all riled up about things when you really could keep this under your hat at least a little longer? I mean, maybe it would get out before the movie comes out, but goodness, we're not even going to get Age of Ultron until next summer, and we already know now, apparently, that the third Avengers movie is, instead of being a proper ending to a trilogy, like you might have expected, because trilogies are very, very popular, and these days, when we franchise movies out, it seems to be very difficult to not try to make that third movie the third act of a broader story, even if it didn't start out that way. Well, with Avengers, it looks like what they're going to do is make the third movie a completely different thing with a whole new set of characters for the most part. And of course, this could change. It's so early. And yet, if this is what they're setting up in Age of Ultron, that might help explain why we're getting this early. Although, again, isn't this kind of thing kind of nicer to get in the movie, the setup? I mean, you know, like I say sometimes, I often feel like I'm part of the problem, where I complain, oh, wouldn't it be nicer for audiences to get these kinds of revelations in the movie instead of jerk faces like me making videos and telling you about it early? And yet, it's fun to speculate, and us movie and comic book fans really enjoy trying to guess at what's going to happen later on. So it's always been a total catch-22, you know, damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situation for me, because on the one hand, I'd sometimes love to be on complete media blackout and keep up with none of this stuff, and yet, I really enjoy the speculation, and I enjoy fostering discussions with you folks. So, people who don't want to know, I hope they don't watch, you know, these kinds of videos. Anyway, so apparently the idea with Avengers 3 is supposed to be Tony Stark leading a brand new team of Avengers, and the rest of the Avengers won't be in it or won't be a huge major part of it. And I can see the wisdom in this. My immediate gut reaction, I just found out about this and turned the camera on, so you're going to kind of see me feeling out my feelings about this right here, but my immediate gut reaction to that is, yeah, if we're going to keep introducing this many different superheroes in this universe, doesn't it make sense to kind of let the Avengers team be a bit of a revolving door, as the article that I read about this called it? And I mean, like, that's, you know, that's a comic book thing. I mean, again, we've been bringing comic book storytelling to these movies. When you get way too many characters to all put in a movie together and give everybody character arcs, like you know, Avengers certainly somewhat struggled with. I mean, you know, some people think that it did worse at it than I do. I think it did, for the most part, pretty well, but I mean, like, you know, I'm in the camp that says that it might have been nice if Hawkeye had had a little more to do and things like that. But what happens, you know, 6 is hard enough to juggle, I guess is the point I'm making. What happens when you have 12 or 24 or 30? Anybody remember a couple years, or a few years back now, Bendis' run on Avengers, where every story arc seemed to have like 30 characters all standing in a room talking to each other, and there were lines of dialogue thrown out that could have kind of come from anybody. Like, I mean, Bendis had a decent voice for each of his characters, but I'm just saying that, like, you know, it's hard to give people moments and presence and screen time. So, since we're introducing Ant-Man and we're introducing Doctor Strange, we're doing all these new characters, it does seem to make sense, if we're going to keep making these team movies, if maybe we kind of let some characters leave and filter others in. I don't know exactly how I feel about having just Tony Stark leading, because I guess it's... I guess from a business standpoint, he sells movies. You look at Iron Man 3, I don't think anybody expected that thing to do the kind of guns it did. It got weirdly close to Avengers numbers, and I think right now the conventional wisdom is Robert Downey is our safety net. We got to keep him around, and he is the first one. He was our he was kind of our springboard into this universe. So we need to keep him around for as long as humanly possible. I guess, you know, I always see Captain America as the leader of the Avengers, so I don't know how I'm going to feel about that till we get there and see exactly how it works. But as far as, you know, this idea of let's make the Avengers movies sometimes about a different cast of characters, I have no problem with that, especially because it might be, and again, we'll see how Age of Ultron is, because that's going to be just a straight-up sequel, I'm sure, you know, to the first Avengers. You know, Avengers is very much a setup movie. We've got these characters that, as Joss Whedon says, don't really belong together. Let's put them together and force them to work together, and then by the end, it's a team that makes sense, but then it's over. So you kind of want to see them get to go on a mission proper through more than just a third act against a bunch of faceless aliens, and so we did really need a sequel to that movie, but does it have to be 3? Is it going to feel lopsided if it isn't 3, I guess is the question that's probably going to be on everybody's minds. And also, if we do a movie that's just Tony Stark and a bunch of other characters, might it feel that way too, where we've got to introduce all those characters to each other, and then you get to the end of the movie and you're like, oh, it's done. Like, are we going to do this every time? Is it going to be 2 movies for each set of teams? I kind of sort of doubt that, and I guess that the idea, at least according to the article I read, is that a 4th Avengers film would be kind of everybody, like the whole Marvel Universe, against some big threat, and probably Thanos if we haven't done that already by 3, and I would kind of hate for the big Infinity Gauntlet movie, as we've been leading up to with all the gemstones and stuff, to be Tony Stark and then all these other characters, but not any of the Phase 1 and 2 guys against Thanos. So the idea of a huge everybody against a big threat movie is very exciting to me, and I know I just said that, like, it's hard to juggle 30 characters in the same movie, but that's your kind of big event thing where you'd focus on a couple, and then everybody else would kind of get moments, where not everybody would have to get big character arcs. They're just, you know, kind of more of a cameo sort of thing. So, yeah, I can see it. I'm very curious to know what the story would be for that 3rd movie, because I guess I was expecting Thanos to be 3. Like, we're really seeding this many, many years in advance if we're going to wait that long to do Infinity Gauntlet. That's really crazy to me. I'm really surprised if that's what ends up going on. But the thing that I think makes a lot of sense about this idea is that when I did a couple weeks ago the Avengers commentary with Dan and Eric, I said that this is lightning you can't catch in a bottle twice. That you can't, as far as how you make people watching the movie feel. I will never feel the same novelty again about getting to see all those characters come together as I did the first time I saw it, because it had never really been done before, and it was a brand new kind of thing. And, you know, you see all these standalone movies, and then you put all these characters together, and you go, wow, I get to see these characters interact with each other. There's a thing I never thought I'd see. You can almost rekindle that feeling a little bit if you do it with these new characters all in their own separate movies, and then you put them all together. And I think maybe that's what they're thinking. Now again, it might not feel as much like they're trying to do that if you maybe kept another couple characters around, you know? If it was like Tony Stark and Captain America, like Iron Man and Captain America lead the team together because they come at things from kind of opposite sides of a coin, but they both end up sort of being leadership types. I could sort of see that, especially if you ever want to do Civil War and you have them at odds, because I still really like the idea of doing that and improving upon that source material in a movie. I'm thinking that if you did maybe that and had like one other person, or maybe just even those two, and mostly a team of brand new heroes, it wouldn't feel so much like you were trying to do that again, if that's ultimately what you're trying to do. But on the other hand, I wouldn't mind kind of having that feeling again, you know, and I certainly would hate if we either had a team that was just too big to do anything less than a 5-hour movie and really give characters screen time and make it work. But I would also really hate for every Avengers movie for a while to have to just be these 6 people plus like 1 or 2 other token people that they kind of rotate out and never really get to do anything cool with these other characters that certainly could be or should be Avengers characters. Ant-Man needs to be on the team. Ant-Man's a major Avengers character. That needs to happen. So I can see the wisdom there. Something else that the article I read suggested, and that's in the description, you can check that out, was that perhaps, and this is speculation of course, part of the idea here is these movies take a long time to make, they're grueling, they're complicated. If you give some of these major actors now some time off to go pursue other things or just take time off, you might be able to get them to renew their contracts easier. So there's a lot of business going on in this idea, and what I always find really fascinating about this kind of stuff is how you juggle the business end of it with the creative end. How do you continue to tell really good stories when you're kind of forced to do something, or you do something because it's kind of the right business thing, and how do you make that work for you instead of against you in a creative sense? How do you keep the thing artistic and engaging and interesting and also make it business? And that's always the difficulty with making business that is art, or art that is business. So I can totally see why they might do this sort of thing. I just hope that they don't handle it in like a too in-your-face or, you know, super obnoxious, cumbersome way. And as I said, I kind of wish they hadn't told us about it this early. I don't know why that's a thing we needed to know. So what kind of characters do we think? What do you think? Leave comments, and I'll tell you what I think that we might see in that third movie. Well, obviously they're likely to make it a movie introducing to a team together, as I said, where we get to see these characters interact with each other that we just saw in Phase 3. So you'd have Doctor Strange, you'd have Ant-Man, and then of characters that they haven't, well, and also, let's not forget Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. Now, I think they're supposed to be villains in Age of Ultron, but who knows what the plans are for them down the road. Equally possible, I think, is Bucky Barnes, and we'll see what happens with him in Captain America 3, but he will, for all intents and purposes, be a Phase 3 character, because we'll have Winter Soldier maybe in more of a superhero capacity. I guess we'll see what they end up doing with that movie, but I think that he is definitely possible, and depending on what they do with Captain America in that movie, is it possible that he might be a second Captain America, and that we might actually get that Bucky cap that people have been kind of kicking around, maybe could happen, considering that Chris Evans kind of doesn't want to keep acting in this role forever. So that's a possibility. Other things that might be possible, Spider-Man is a possibility right now, and today there was, I didn't do a captain's log on this, Vince and I are probably this week on the live show gonna touch on this and talk about it a little bit, that Sony and Marvel are looking like they're inching closer to a possible agreement, a possible negotiating, getting the Amazing Spider-Man Andrew Garfield in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and actually roping those movies in. Might he be an Avenger in 3? Personally, I'm not a big fan of Spider-Man as an Avenger. I don't really want to see that, but it's a thing that is now possible. It seems like in order to make those movies more popular and get more people to want to see them, the very, very first thing they do if they got that negotiation happen would be to throw Spider-Man into an Avengers movie. And of course, you don't have to give him another movie first because we've already seen him twice. So I think that is very plausible, assuming that that deal goes through, and right now I think it's very likely that that deal ends up happening. That's just my personal opinion. Like I said, Vince and I will speculate and talk about how we feel about that and if we think that's a thing that should happen probably this Wednesday. Anyway, other characters that we haven't seen yet that could possibly come in if they wanted to like introduce anyone in that film. If that happens, I mean, obviously they kind of have enough already, potentially. But what if, like I'm thinking Captain Marvel is a possibility. I'm wondering when the Wasp happens. I haven't heard anything about her being in Age of Ultron unless I missed it. So I'm kind of surprised that that's not a character that we've heard more talking about, and maybe it's something that has been mentioned and I've just missed. But what else? Like I said, I think Winter Soldier is a possibility. I don't know about other characters that haven't been done yet, because they're starting to mine more characters for Marvel Netflix series. Although maybe we shouldn't discount the possibility that one of those characters winds up in this. And with that talk about a fourth film being like everybody and his dog up against a big threat, I wonder if we don't see some of those characters even from the Netflix series and that. I mean, anything is possible now. I think we're gonna see very quickly a breakdown of the walls between movies and television with regards to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think it's only a matter of time as those things come out and if they're popular before we see a lot of cross-pollination and stuff. Anyway, what do you folks think about this? Again, I think it's possible that this is a thing that could end up not actually happening and changing, but I suppose it just depends on what's being seeded in Age of Ultron. I suppose we'll see. Leave your comments, looking forward to reading them, and as always, I am Captain Logan, and this concludes yet another Captain's Log.